Okay, there is a lot going on, so I'm just going to put out a little video, talk about a couple things on my mind here. So, first of all, looking at Twitter yesterday, I see deep fakes going around about this mass shooter. I see this debate. There's a debate going on Twitter, which is whether a Hispanic person can be a white supremacist or not. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I would think they would probably be a, Mexican supremacist or Colombian supremacist, if anything, rather than a white supremacist. Now, there, I've encountered in Latin America racism, but racism there is not as vicious and as virulent as in the United States, and it's not really as a huge. It's not a concern at all in places like Colombia. There is the whole thing where a lot of people in Latin America pride themselves on being more European and less indigenous. I've seen that. Colombia, as far as I've seen, seems to have a bigger population of African descendants than the United States, as far as I could tell. And the whole black versus white thing, and there are Colombians who think of themselves as European more than anything, but there's none of this. You don't see the black versus white thing. You don't see it in almost any other country, anywhere in the world. People throughout the world in different places tend to separate more along the lines of religion or cultural differences, not on skin color, not on superficial stuff. It really, Americans don't realize how ridiculous, the rest of the world sees this whole situation we have in the United States. You're starting to see it, the whole race, I don't know if you want to call it, well, yeah, let's call it for what it is. You're starting to see some, racial activism pop up a little bit in places like Brazil or, I don't know. I don't see it in Colombia. In Latin America, the sort of wedge issue tends to be indigenous versus non-indigenous, and that does exist, and that is kind of a similar analog to the race issue in the United States. But this whole thing of people on Twitter debating whether a Hispanic person can be a white supremacist it just shows how ridiculous of a time we live in. And like I said, and then one guy says, "Oh, if you've never met if you've never met a Hispanic white supremacist, you've probably not spent much time in Miami." And I'll tell you what, I've been in this area for 20 years, and I have yet to see a Cuban or Venezuelan or Nicaraguan white supremacist. I've seen Cuban supremacists who were, maybe a bit, had a little bit of a superiority complex about Cubans or whatnot. You see that a little bit. At least some people, some of the more tightly knit families and communities come across that way. So yeah, you got that, but not white supremacists. They're not sporting Nazi tattoos like the people in Ukraine are. They're not, no, it doesn't exist. I mean, Mexican nationalists can be rather xenophobic, but they're more like Aztec supremacists or Chicano supremacists. They're not white supremacists. They don't believe in Aryan superiority. That's absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe there's people actually talking about that. It's just dumb. So if there's an actual Hispanic white supremacist, there's probably one or two out there. Okay, like maybe literally one or two, but it's a ridiculous debate. Now the second thing I wanted to talk about is RFK made a lot of waves among people who are grounded in reality anyway, and who don't who don't depend on, cable news or any of the legacy media. So Robert F. Kennedy comes out over the weekend and makes a very strong accusation that the CIA was involved. I don't remember. I did listen to it, but I don't remember exactly what he said. I think he said they were involved in the assassination of JFK, and that's pretty much common knowledge at this point. And there's enough evidence to make that probability more probable than not, more likely than not. Now, we have to distinguish, first of all, what that means. That doesn't mean that the CIA as an organization was involved intricately or at all in the assassination. That means that people within the CIA, probably with the approval of Dulles, were involved. The thing about intelligence agencies, and especially the CIA, is they're very compartmentalized. So individuals or small groups of CIA officers going rogue is not out of the ordinary. It may be a rare occurrence, but it's not an occurrence that has never happened. So, it's not that the CIA sent out memos and said, hey, we're going to kill John F. Kennedy, so, get ready. No, it was that there was probably a small group of people, because, see, the people in the CIA, of all people, know that if you want to pull a conspiracy like that off, you got to keep you got to keep as few people involved as possible. It may have been 50 or less people that had direct knowledge of it. Definitely not just in the CIA. There's strong evidence that the Secret Service agents that were there at the assassination, the people who were driving the car and in the car with Kennedy, were involved. There's definitely, I believe that LBJ was probably the ringleader, or at least a very pivotal person in this whole situation. Maybe it was Dulles that was the ringleader. Maybe it was somebody else. So there's plenty of evidence out there. People who maintain that Oswald was the lone gunman. Well, no one who's serious actually accepts that anymore. Because all you got to do is look at the video and see that the bullets were coming from two different directions. That's all you got to do. So he's correct. And then yesterday, so that made some waves. And yesterday he went along and kind of like added to the assertions he made over the weekend. And what really struck me is he ended with this sort of flattery of the CIA, saying, what people usually say, oh, there's lots of good officers and good patriotic, blah, blah, blah. And he said his daughter-in-law, which is interesting, was a field officer. And that's pretty amazing. He didn't say that she is. Whether she retired or not, I'd be interested to know whether she went all the way or whether she got out early. Because it seems to me like lately, there's a lot of people getting out of the CIA and all of these agencies early and not sticking around. So that should tell you something about what's going on within the agencies. But then he does this flattery thing, and I just don't. And the first thing I said is, okay, so there's lots of good officers, lots of good people, patriotic people, and they really believe in America, and they really want to do what's best for America. Okay, so where are they? Where are they? Okay? I don't see them doing anything to stop the nonsense that's going on. I don't see any of them that really, pushed back on the cover-up of JFK. I don't see much of anything. So if there's so many good officers and good people, show me where they are, and I'll believe you. I mean, I'm sure there are good people, but let's define good. Just because someone is good, a good person, doesn't mean they're not self-interested, and they wouldn't put their head in the sand and bide their time for their crappy ass pension rather than, doing the right thing, which most people don't do the right thing. Even good people don't do the right thing. Only exceptional people do the right thing. So maybe, we should look at it in that context. There are good people in the CIA. There's no exceptional people, or very few exceptional people in the CIA, which is typical for a government agency. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second thing I would say is, don't forget it now, Patrick. Don't forget it now. Can I pause this for a second? Maybe I can pause it. I can't pause it. The second thing is, if he thinks that little tweet, one tweet, that however many words it is, I forget how many characters, that 200 or so characters that he put that was intended to flatter the CIA, if he thinks that is going to placate the CIA as a collective organization from going after him, going all out, I think he should understand that's not the case. Maybe he does, and he's just doing that to, he's just saying that to, put the boomers at ease, because, the boomers love their government agencies since they depend on them. Maybe he... if he thinks that that's going to placate the CIA and keep them from seeing him as a direct threat, that's not how they operate. They're going to go after him. They're going to go all out, and he can make all the flattering platitudes he wants. And guess what? They don't give a fuck, and they're going to do what they want, and they're going to do what they can to stop him. Okay. And I'm not going to say any more, because we all know where that can lead. And maybe that's what Americans need to see before they wake up. All right. But RFK Jr., flattery will get you nowhere with the CIA. These people work with a single mind when they perceive a threat, as we saw it with Trump. Now, Trump was a fucking bumbling idiot, and maybe JFK can, have a little more finesse in the situation. But don't think for a minute that throwing out a couple tweets about how good the CIA is going to make them think any differently of you. All right, so that is it. I am out.